Welcome to the Circular Economy Show, and welcome to the Circular Economy Show End of Year Review episode 2022. I'm Seb, I'm your host, and I've been with you all year. And wow, it has really been quite a year, hasn't it?
The first principle of the circular economy is to eliminate waste and pollution. Achieving this would reduce current threats to biodiversity. In order to eliminate waste and pollution, we need a mindset shift.
I was on the train one morning to Waterloo, and I noticed 3 guys holding identical coffee cups. And they had clearly bought it from the same coffee place and gotten onto the train. And it was interesting because they were enjoying it. At the end, we all got off at the same stop, and they all threw their coffee cups in the same bin.
And one really great example with this is Club Zero, who basically applied the reuse principle when it comes to getting coffee around London. So you can go to one coffee shop, it doesn't matter which chain, and you have your refillable coffee, and you get your, I think you're a mocha guy, right? And you get the mocha.
That's about me and you, but let's carry on.
You get the mocha, you drink it, and then you're nowhere near that coffee shop because London is quite big, right? But what you can do is go to another coffee shop from a completely different chain, but because they're all within the system set up by Club Zero, you can just drop off the empty cup there, and it will be cleaned, it will be taken forward, and then someone else can use it.
We need to understand waste and pollution as what they are, design flaws. We need to ask ourselves in the design process, what is going to happen to this product at the end of its life? When you eliminate waste and pollution through design, you are also protecting our natural ecosystems by keeping the waste away from these natural systems in the first place.
It certainly has been quite a year on the Circular Economy Show. We've talked about the importance of mindset shift. We've focused on design and the critical role it plays in a circular economy. And we've also spent a significant amount of time talking about one of our biggest global challenges. Another topic that I find really interesting, Pablo, because you were talking about partnerships earlier. Unilever is one of a number of businesses that have recently endorsed the need for EPR and the need for a global treaty, a legally binding global treaty on plastics and on plastic pollution. Why have you done that?
Well, we are part of 70 companies, actually, that we have signed up for it, supporting a plastic global treaty through the United Nations. And the main reason, Seb, is because we need a level playing field for this. Yeah, we need to ensure we all play with the same rules. That is, we are supportive of it, and that's why we believe that that treaty, it should be legally binding. Is very, very important. It is legally binding, so there's no way around this. And the second element for the treaty will be we have to ensure that we'll drive reduction in the amount of virgin plastic is produced to force the system to start moving into a more circular system. So those are the 2 key elements. When it comes to EPR schemes, extended producer responsibility schemes, again, we are supportive of those schemes as long as they are implemented and created in the right way. We believe it will help the industry as a whole to move into circular systems.
It's a global industry, right? And for the industry to really go through the necessary transformation at the global scale, then it's important to have one approach and one common set of rules across countries to relate to. That makes it both more easier and more efficient to solve the problem in practical terms. We need a global circular economy. That's why we need global laws, global regulations through a treaty. And in order to stop the current situation, which is really just producing virgin plastics, using it for a very short amount of time and creating a huge waste problem at the other end of that linear economy that we currently have. If we are to reach a goal or get as close as we possibly can to the goal of zero plastic pollution, that's what we really have to. From the nature and environmental side, plastic doesn't disappear in the environment. So any plastic that we release will stay there and accumulate. So we have a finite planet. We really have to get to zero plastic pollution.
One of the questions I certainly have is, in the case of Costa Rica, how would this treaty help you, as a nation, as a country, address plastic pollution?
Well, I think Costa Rica is a small country with no army, so we rely on multilateralism. And so we are always supportive of the international treaties, international law, rule of law. And I think this treaty could be a great opportunity to have a regulation that is binding to all the countries, to all the industries, that the industrialized world won't be banning products, but sending them to the developing world. And I think it's important also that a treaty like this will put circular economy as an important approach to solve a global problem such as plastic pollution.
So without further ado, let's start with Elisa. I mean, obviously we have this very exciting development in early March. We had a historic day in terms of, the campaign to beat plastic pollution. We have, had this UN Environment Assembly meeting in Nairobi to end plastic pollution, to really forge this internationally legally binding agreement by 2024, and obviously addressing the full life cycle of plastic, including production, design, disposal, and so on. And obviously the resolution spells out the mandate for negotiations until 2024. So what actually happened, from your perspective at the UN Environment Programme? Why was it such an outstanding moment?
Thank you very much, Martin. And when I'm thinking back at a few months ago at the UN Environment Assembly, and as Andrew was referring to it in the opening, there's still a bit of emotion when one thinks of the gavel going down and approving the resolution and plastic pollution towards an international legally binding agreement. And the reason why I'm referring to the full title of the resolution is because it has two important messages behind it. One is our purpose, our objective, ending plastic pollution. And that's the way in which we will be measuring our success of this journey.
So as you just heard, on March 2nd, the unprecedented step was taken to agree to negotiate for a global plastics treaty that's legally binding to end plastics pollution. And we'll be following the progress of that UN treaty over the course of the next year. It's absolutely critical that the key stakeholders get behind that treaty to ensure that it has teeth. We also talked about cities. Remember when Sarah Carroll told us that cities are at the front line of a circular economy transformation?
Well, we know that our urban centres are grappling with the effects of our current take, make, waste linear economy. 75% of the world's natural resources are used in cities. 50% of global solid waste production comes from cities. Cities contribute to between 60 and 80% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And given that 2/3 of us will live in cities by 2050, we can only expect that these challenges and the costs associated with them will increase over time. And that's why I like to think about cities as the front line for the circular economy transition, where we need to concentrate action. Well, what I think is really exciting is that there are cities all around the world that are actively supporting circular economy activities. And I could talk about, like you said, I could talk about cities endlessly, but since we're at the beginning of the show and we have a lot to get through today, I'll just give you a few of my favorite examples.
That'd be really helpful.
So in New York City, they have the Donate NYC platform, which allows New Yorkers to donate and share anything from used furniture to edible food. New York City also puts on Refashion Week every year, which spotlights secondhand and sustainable fashion. Sao Paulo's Connect the Dots program is really realizing a circular vision for food. Milan's also doing great work in the food space. London has an incredible business support program. They have more than £1.8 million dedicated to circular business transformation. And cities like Toronto, Amsterdam, and Paris are doing amazing work to support sharing and repairing in their cities. Those are a few examples.
So next year on the Circular Economy Show, we'll be diving even deeper into the way in which communities and neighbourhoods are adopting the circular economy and affecting the way people work, live, and play. So what about the designers, the individuals who are leading or pioneering or testing out this transition? Well, we've been covering their stories too.
Much as the world is going global, we also have to think about what we have. And we have to learn to value what we have because we have everything here in abundance.
We are absolutely thrilled to be celebrating the ambitious innovation and enormous impact created by 4 fearless innovators whose efforts to redefine the future of fashion have seen them receive nominations and awards for one of the industry's most prestigious events. Welcome to this very special edition of the Circular Economy Show from the Sustainable Fashion Awards in Milan.
Founder and lead designer Eileen Fisher started her brand in the 80s. A true pioneer of circular fashion, Eileen has been testing different circular models for the past 20 years and debuted her own take-back model, Green Eileen, in 2009. So what are the big challenges? What has the company learned during the course of its journey? And what does circular design mean for Eileen Fisher?
The fashion industry, the way it's working right now, is not sustainable. It requires massive change in the system. There's way too much waste in the system. We're using way too many resources. It just isn't sustainable the way it is. So we need a new plan.
So I think it's important that we inspire the next generation of designers to really think holistically about the products that they make, to think about products that have longevity, not just in the sense of, sort of built to last and made with durable materials, but also built to have value in the future so that they can be resold to new consumers eventually. The goal is to become fully circular eventually. I think alongside that, we're expanding our use of regenerative materials, and the hope is that one day we can have a net positive effect on nature.
We launched Vestiaire with the idea to promote the circular fashion movement as a solution to fight overconsumption, overproduction, and the wasteful practices of the fashion industry. Our vision and mission is clear. We want to transform the fashion industry for a more sustainable future by empowering our community to drive change.
Fashion unicorn Vestiaire Collective began a circular business model for fashion in 2009 and now enjoys a community of 23 million people across 90 different countries. Generating revenue without making new clothes, Vestiaire Collective circulates high-end luxury goods on one of the world's biggest online selling platforms and is currently valued at $1.7 billion.
We start Vestiaire first for our friends, then for a community, a larger community, because we notice that people keep buying, but they don't wear, they don't use. So it is waste, and the platform was able to offer them one solution to expand the life cycle of the items. What was important for Vestia is to build that community, but also that unique catalog with our curation. To select, I would say, the item that keep their value over the time. That's why we don't sell everything. That's why also we fight against fast fashion, and we encourage people to buy better, to keep and to wear, of course. And if you don't wear anymore, just sell it. When you buy pre-loved fashion, you're like an activist. You do something good for the planet, for the next generation, for tomorrow, for today, but also for tomorrow.
I'm really, really happy to have received this award. It means a lot to me because what it shows is that African voices are finally being heard. A lot of us have been working in this industry for such a long time, but we're only known at home. And so now I think it's just amazing that we're able to tell our stories outside of where we come from. And by telling our stories, other people can learn from us, we can learn from them.
And I think, sharing what we learn as we go with the wider industry is something that we're very keen to do so that everybody can work together towards a circular economy. Broadly speaking, I think consumers are really interested in any product which has a low carbon footprint. They want to buy products and consume products which help reduce the impact on the environment. So if that is regenerative or products made from recycled materials, they're actively seeking out those products now. We hear that.
From regeneratively designed footwear adorning the catwalks of Milan, we also headed to Kenya to see regenerative agriculture in action.
Farmers in Africa are important to the economy, but also very exposed to climate change. Regenerative agriculture is farming practices that bring back destroyed soil in a way that makes soil healthy and productive, restores biodiversity, and improves nutrition. That's the future.
So Cindy, could you tell us about how our current economic system contributes to biodiversity loss?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we produce the products and services and use them in our economies today is a huge contributor to the biodiversity loss we see. In fact, research has found that 90% of biodiversity loss globally and 50% of all greenhouse gas emissions are a direct result from our production and consumption systems. This is a huge impact on the way that our economy works. And this is largely because we operate currently in a linear economy. So that means that we're taking resources from the ground, we're making products out of them, and then very quickly afterwards, we're discarding them. And at every stage of this, we're having an impact on nature.
There are 2 innovative farms in Kenya practicing regenerative agriculture. We have Tamaru using agroforestry and Farmer Max using livestock to regenerate soils.
The story about this farm is not just about chickens. It's about using chickens as a tool to regenerate soil. What we're trying to do is stop any disturbance in the soil and try and revitalize it by using livestock to fertilize the soil in a natural way. Conventional poultry farming is usually in confined houses where there's a batch of 3,000–4,000 chickens. Whereas what we do is we take away that pressure by shifting the coops.
We decided to set up agroforestry because we wanted a food production system that produces superior quality, enhances soil and sequesters as much carbon as possible, and enhances, of course, biodiversity. was really when we first went to Brazil and discovered the advantages of syntropic agroforestry over any other agroforestry. We realized a lot of the crops that they were using in Brazil are also in Africa. And so we knew we could do it here and just slightly change it ever so slightly just to fit into the local context. So if you can imagine in a natural forest, you've got lots of different levels. You've got your canopy crops, you've got your emergent above that, you've got your sub-canopy, and then you've got your ground level stuff. In some circumstances, you've even got stuff growing under the ground. And that's what we're strongly mimicking in a system like this.
For chefs, it's our duty to source our food from producers who are really looking after the environment. And I can tell you from a chef's point of view, this is where it starts. This is where you start building flavour. And more you'll see customers push back and actually demand that their food comes from responsible sources.
The future has got food and feed for everyone. We should not just think about ourselves. We are part of nature. We need to have a stable agricultural system in which we're able to store a lot of carbon in the soil to produce healthy food for human beings and other parts of the ecosystem, and therefore get on a path of growth that is based on the wider concept of circular economy.
We also did a couple of big live gigs this year, streaming live from the Roundhouse, from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's biggest events, our Innovation Workshop in March and the Summit in July. Let's get a taste of what that action was all about.
And we're going to be diving into what a circular economy startup actually looks like, what opportunities are they tapping into, and what barriers do they still have to overcome.
I'm here with David from Winnow, a startup that uses AI to reduce food waste in commercial kitchens. Hi, David. Can you tell us a little bit more about Winnow, and are you able to show us how the technology works?
Absolutely. So Winnow develops artificial intelligence tools to help chefs in large kitchens like staff restaurants, universities, hotels, casinos, and cruise ships to run more profitable and sustainable kitchens by cutting food waste in half. So we work in about 45 different countries. We work with the likes of IKEA, Hilton, Compass Group, Iberostar, and many others. And effectively, what we're trying to do is teach a machine to see the food that's being thrown away. So the field is computer vision. Now, why would you want to do that, I hear you ask? Well, the problem that we solve is that 5 to 15% of all the food that a chef buys will end up in the bin. And the reason for that is that it's very difficult to measure it. So our mission is just to make it as easy as possible to measure. So if you'll come on a bit of a journey with me, maybe use your imagination, because we didn't want to bring real food waste into this lovely venue. I've got a fake piece of fish here. So imagine it's Friday. We've had our fish lunch at the university canteen, and unfortunately we haven't sold some of it. I was going to have to throw it away. So the chef will come and they'll throw the fish into the bin. Underneath the bin is a digital scale, and it registers that there's been a change in weight. We ask the user to identify why the food was wasted. Where did it come from in the production process? So in this case, it's mains. In real time, the AI looks at the picture that we've taken, and in this case, it's given us 4 options. So the first option, it's saying we think it's breaded cod fillet fish, so it's got it right. But it could also be carrot, maybe it might be tomatoes, or could it be an omelette? And it's asking us to verify that it is fish. On this screen, then, the user will see the weight, but also, crucially, the value. So that's really important to raise awareness of the true cost of food waste. And then the chef will go about his or her day, and we've made it really easy to record that piece of food waste in a really detailed way. So over the course of the service, the kitchen will continue to register all of their food waste. That then is pinged up to the cloud. Our analytics platform then analyzes that data, and in the morning, the team will get a report, and it will detail exactly how much food waste occurred, what the different items were, and then also where they should focus to make improvements over the course of the next day's service. And we find that over a period of about 6 to 12 months, that we typically be able to cut food waste in half. And that can be significantly beneficial to a business where if they're wasting 10% of the food they buy, we're able to cut their food purchasing cost by 5%. So it's a big kind of business value proposition as well as the environmental as well.
Offices and corporate entities around London will place a bulk order with us. When they order, they request that they want to use reusable or sustainable packaging with their order. Pack it up, send it out that way. It then gets collected, goes off to their sanitation facility, and then comes back to us. It's clear that they have a goal to improve the amount of packaging going to waste and to do it at scale.
What is convenience and what is the cost of that addiction we have to convenience? So the notion that you're going to use a cup once to drink, a coffee that big and then chuck it in the bin doesn't make sense.
How do we evolve into a circular economy is multiple things. We need to have more communications from government, councils to explain to a consumer what to do. It's about creating more adoption. That's where the scale part is missing, making sure that this is everywhere in a city.
I'm joined by Jess from Appeal, which is a circular economy innovator that has arguably achieved the startup dream, unicorn status. That is reaching $1 billion valuation without being listed on the stock market. But we know that money alone is not enough. So you hit unicorn status in 2020. You've received funding also from the likes of Katy Perry, Oprah, some pretty big names there. And we're talking about an edible coating that removes the need for packaging from things like fruit and vegetables. So how did you achieve this growth?
Great question, and thank you so much for having us here. In the very beginning, it was really about starting with the problem. I think most people in this room are familiar with the fact that 1/3 of all food produced for consumption goes to waste. That represents about 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions when you take all of the resources that are used to produce that food and distribute it into account. At the same time, 1 in 9 people are going hungry. And for some types of food, specifically highly perishable food, these waste rates are even higher, upwards to 50%. And so what we identified was really part of the issue was time. It wasn't that we weren't producing enough food to feed the need of the global community. It was that we didn't have time to get that food to those who need it, or that at least that's one of the biggest factors. So we set out on this mission to try to create more time, specifically for fresh fruits and vegetables. Flash forward 6 years later through R&D, and with really 2 main guiding principles. One, we don't think that anything should be on your food except for food. So really, in looking at the suite of materials that we could use, that was a core component. And the other was, nature is the greatest innovator, and that's really who we look to. So instead of going into the lab and synthesizing something the world had never seen before, we studied the peels and skins of fruits and vegetables to understand what was it about the molecular structure or specific components that were creating the barrier that slowed down water loss and oxidation naturally, for lack of a better word. Why is it that when you pick an apple off the tree, it doesn't immediately go to mush? And so that was the inspiration for our product.
It certainly has been quite a year. We've showcased the best examples of the circular economy in action. We've explored the big ideas behind the concept of a circular economy, and we've asked the big questions. And we'll be doing much more of the same in 2023. But for now, Happy New Year and see you next year.